Hello everyone, X-Walk Hill Bethelite here. And let's talk a little bit about how the recent changes that Watchtower has made is going to quicken its downfall. Literally, they shoot themselves in the foot, so to speak. You had the change with the beards, the change with the way disfellowship people are dealt with, the change with the time report. And of course, we all know about the changes with using Zoom, and then also the changes with, you don't see that much door to door anymore. They're either letter writing or going to stand next to a cart. How are all these things going to affect Watchtower well into the future? I'm talking years into the future. How will this affect the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses? Well, one thing that's going to happen that has never happened before is it's going to blur the line between your extreme Jehovah's Witness cult member over here on the left and your somewhat, rebellious, kind of just going just because they're going to the Kingdom Hall, but not really that zealous, or what Jehovah's Witnesses would say, spiritual. On your right, you would have that person. Well, before there was a big difference between the two. Now, you ain't going to be able to tell. You're not going to be able to tell. They're going to be sitting there with a beard. Normally, if you were going to the hall with the beard, you're automatically thrown over into this lane over on this side, the not so spiritual person. Well, they just said it's okay for everybody to have it. For the longest time, and we all know it makes no sense, but for the longest time, Jehovah's Witnesses have associated having a beard with not being that spiritual, because people that would show up at the hall with the little 5 o'clock shadow, the beard kind of growing in, they're looking at them like, they don't really love Jehovah because they got facial hair. Just stupid stuff like that. It was an indication, a false indication of spirituality. The same with your attire. If you came to the Kingdom Hall, you ain't got no tie on, you ain't got no suit jacket, they look at you and they immediately toss you over into the right side over here, where we put the person that's kind of, not really that spiritual. What they would think of as not really good association. Well, they blur the lines. They completely blur the lines. So now the spiritual person, the governing body has decided, you heard them themselves, that it's okay to do all that stuff. All the things that Jehovah's Witnesses would look at and say, this person ain't spiritual. Well, in that broadcast, the governing body has decided all those things are okay. So essentially, Jehovah's Witnesses, the cult, did not completely eliminate shunning and disfellowshipping. However, over time, it should over time be less and less prominent. Because for me, growing up in the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses, you'd have amongst the circuit, I'm talking amongst a bunch of Kingdom Halls, they would all be full of people who were disfellowshipped. Full of people that the cult has just designated as that person on the right that is not that spiritual, huge different from the person on the left. In the future, for the future of Watchtower, you should see less and less disfellowship people. Now, it's interesting to me. It's very interesting that the cult couldn't get on the broadcast and say, hey, we're not shunning anymore. They don't want to admit that they're shunning. They kind of did when they showed the video of the woman who was disfellowshipped and stating that, well, you can talk to her now as long as your conscience allows you to do it. You don't want to talk to her all day, but you can talk to her now. And then shows her sitting down in a seat all by herself. Well, they kind of self-snitched on themselves a little bit there. So they don't want to completely do a 180 on the shunning, probably because of possible legal reasons, possible how it would look. You know, you got all these people that have been disfellowshipped. Now you're saying that it was never necessary to begin with. You know, they're probably trying to avoid legal issues. But what they did do is eliminate darn near all the criteria that Jehovah's Witnesses would look at to see a person and say they're not spiritual, therefore tagging them as a person you would shun, such as field service. Oh, this person isn't out in field service that much. Well, now none of them are going out in field service that much. They done lowered the hour requirement for pioneering and auxiliary pioneering. Imagine the person that ain't doing none of that. They done lowered the hour requirement. A person that's not pioneering or auxiliary pioneering, they ain't got no hour requirement at all. They don't have to record a certain amount of hours at all. Just checking the box to say you did something. They just eliminated one of the criteria Jehovah's Witnesses would look at and say, this person is not spiritual because they're not out in field service that much. They got rid of the whole thing. So essentially, they didn't eliminate, or let me word that better. They didn't go and announce, hey, don't shun people who are doing this anymore. They didn't announce that. They didn't announce, hey, we don't shun anymore. But what they did do is get rid of all the stuff that they would use for reasons to shun people. So if you eliminate all that, well, in the future, you should have less disfellowship people, unless they're just plumb dumb and they're going and they're just telling on themselves. Keep in mind, you ain't even got to go to the hall anymore. You can watch it on Zoom. You can sit at home and watch it on Zoom. Or you can sit at home and cut on the TV and watch TV, watch your sports, watch your movies, play your video games, and just have the meeting on Zoom sitting on your laptop somewhere off somewhere. You ain't even got to show up anymore. So once you eliminate having to even show up to the meeting, when you don't feel like going, you can just watch it on Zoom. You eliminate the having to even look a certain way. You don't got to shave your beard no more. You ain't got to put on a suit jacket. You ain't got to have a tie. You don't got to spend a whole lot of time getting ready for no meeting. Just have some slacks and a shirt. You eliminate all those things, the look that they expected, the field service time that they used to expect, the meeting, even attendance ain't even enough to do. The elders aren't going to be able to harass people asking them for field service time. You eliminate all the things that they were using as criteria or the fuel to the fire to be able to shun people, disfellowship and the such. And darn near the only thing left is if a person just flat out tells on themselves and darn near asks to be disfellowship. That appears to be the direction the cult is heading in. It's kind of, like when a business or a company wants to eliminate a certain product, they kind of want to ease that off the shelf. They want to just snatch it off. They ease it off the shelf. And that's what it looks like they're doing with the whole disfellowshipping and shunning. They're kind of easing it off the shelf. Because if you sitting there without no suit jacket, you ain't got to have no tie, you ain't even got to shave your beard, you ain't even got to show up that much, you ain't even got to go out in field service like that, and you're still getting this fellowship, you done told on yourself or something. Now, they still stick with their, calling people apostates and the such. But you got to understand, the people that they are calling apostates, those joyous, happy people who have left the cult and are enjoying their lives, these people could care less. It don't affect me. If they label me an apostate, that is a badge of honor to be looked at as not a part of this big group of dumb people. If a group of imbeciles look at you and say, you're not in our group, do you know how big of a pat on the back that is? Do you know how big of a compliment it is for Jehovah's Witnesses to say you're an apostate? For a whole cult of stupid people to look at you and say you're not dumb enough to be one of us. That's great. So the people that in that broadcast, they deemed them apostates, that's a pat on the back. That's great. We don't care. We're still going to point out all the errors and things of the such. It's not going to affect us, right? So that part is irrelevant. The part of the broadcast where they're talking about apostate, that part is irrelevant. People that are all the way out, the people that are making videos, the people that are out doing the crashes, whether it be at the assemblies or activism, they don't care. They ain't afraid of Watchtower. They don't care. They don't care what Watchtower gets up and says about them. It's the members that this is going to affect down the line, years down the line. So years down the line, you should have a blend of people that kind of, it's hard to pick out who's quote unquote spiritual and not spiritual. You're not going to be able to really do it based off a comment because you ain't even got to study the comment. Amongst Jehovah's Witnesses, that is the absolute truth. You do not have to spend a whole bunch of time researching and studying to answer the questions that are asked on a fourth grade level. You just look at the paragraph and find the answer just like that. So it ain't going to be hard to just raise your hand and give one comment. Or if you didn't even give a comment, hey, you raised your hand, they can't say nothing about you ain't spiritual because they didn't call on you. And another thing, not only are they eliminating all them criteria Jehovah's Witnesses used to use to say a person isn't spiritual, to even start the shunning in the first place, but in eliminating a lot of the power elders have, you're going to see that is a much less coveted position. Like elders used to be able to harass people. They used to be able to just make decisions whenever they wanted to. Now the governing body is saying, well, you got to meet with people more than one time. You can't just up and DF somebody. Now keep in mind, unless you're telling on yourself, unless you're doing stuff and you're doing it in front of the cult, you know what I mean? Unless you're just out there with it, they shouldn't have no reason to be knocking on your door anyway, because you ain't even got to go out to service or even show up to meetings that much if you don't want to. Or if they do come knocking, the cult, their whole lives are based off of a lie. They want more lie than they want the truth. Just tell them something, get them off your porch. You weren't feeling good. You had to work. Go on about your business. Unless you are just telling on yourself, there should be less shunning. And then also, too, this is where I think the cult kind of messed up, right? Because now they're going to have less people wanting to be elders and whatnot because they got all the fun is gone. You can't control everybody. They done let people do what they want. They done let people dress down. They done let women wear pants now. They're just letting people do what they want now. Elders used to be able to walk up to a woman. I remember, because I remember going out in field service and my partner was a sister, and one of the elders just came on out and just said, you ain't supposed to be wearing this and you ain't supposed to be wearing that. And I think it's kind of the elders, a lot of them have some kind of a feeling of sexual gratification. They can look women up and down and tell them what they can and can't put on, even if it ain't not their relative, not their wife, none of that. They just walk up to random women and just start pointing out their dress, how tight it is and all kinds of stuff. Once you eliminate that, you start to eliminate the reason why people want to be elders to begin with. Watchtower came forward and said in that broadcast that elders can't go over minors' houses by themselves and just to go see the kid. Well, how many elders in the Jehovah's Witness cult, the only reason why they want to be elders is so that they can go and try to meet up with kids at these different houses? The only reason why they want to be elders is so that they can, without the parents thinking anything, go over these people's houses and molest their kids and whatnot. Well, now it's going to be, hey, if that happens, that elder is going to get sued. Watchtower's like, don't sue us because we just told them not to do it. We just told them don't go over nobody's house unless the parents there. Right? Watchtower's trying to get rid of some of these lawsuits. They're getting sued into oblivion. So Watchtower's like, well, we're going to come forward and say, hey, this is the rule now. Y'all can't just be going up in people's houses without the parents there. Do you know how many pedophiles were throwing tables and running around throwing stuff in the house and kicking walls and pissed off because they can't? That's the whole freaking reason they joined the freaking cult, is to try to find ways to molest. So once you have gotten rid of all of that, and you've limited the power the elders thought they had, well, you've eliminated the whole reason why they joined the cult. A lot of these elders don't think the cult is the truth. They know it's not the truth because it can't be the truth and constantly having to correct it because it was false. They're there because they're nobodies, and Watchtower gives them all kinds of power and authority over people. People that are dumb enough to listen to them. Well, now that you start to eliminate all the criteria they were able to pick out and find reasons to, power trip on people for, start eliminating all that and letting people do what they want to do. Women wearing pants and everything, men wearing beard and everything. Like, you see what I'm saying? That you got less reasons to want to be in that position. So down the line, I think that while Watchtower is probably trying to appease different governments that have been removing funding because of how extreme the cult is, I don't think that that's going to happen because I think these governments know what Watchtower is. You can't try to pretend now and try to make all these changes now like you're not extreme and you're not a cult just because you're all of a sudden up and let people wear beards. I don't think these governments are that stupid where they're gonna fall for that. So I think that the governments are still oftentimes going to either ban Jehovah's Witnesses, remove funding. They're not going to be tax-free everywhere. That I don't think is going to change. And, old Splain, when he was talking about the governments and when they do that, God is going to get them or something to that effect. That's him being upset, throwing a fit, because Watchtower is losing money all over the place and there ain't nothing he can do about it. There is nothing he can do about it but get on a broadcast and throw a hissy fit talking about Jehovah don't like that. So into the future, you're going to have less of a dividing factor of who is and who is not that spiritual, which means you're going to have less peer pressure, which means you're going to have more people who are a little bit less, you're going to have more people that are a little bit more relaxed. It's going to be a whole lot easier to fade if you don't want to be a part of that cult. It's going to be a whole lot easier to fade. You ain't got to worry about trying to shave your beard all the time or anything like that. You don't have to show up that often. You ain't got to worry about, oh man, I'm trying to fade, but I got to go out and field service door to door. You ain't got to worry about that. So it's going to be easier to fade, easier for people to leave. Into the future, you should still see the numbers dwindling because it's too late in the game, Watchtower, to be trying to make all these changes. It gets to the point where it's just ridiculous. They're making so many changes now. It's insane to be trying to make 70-year-old people grow beards just now for the first time in their lives. Like it's idiotic for them to try to change everything now, but they didn't already started it. They can't go back on it now. They didn't already started it. So they didn't already did all this stuff. So you just made it easier for people to fade. You done made it easier for the people that ain't falling for the BS to kind of blend in with the rest of the people now with a whole lot less requirements. Women ain't got to go get a dress if they don't want a dress. You know what I mean? Like it's making it easier for us to essentially ease our way up out of there. For the people that don't have family in the cult, oh, you can just up and leave right now if you want to. You can up and leave and go to a church where you actually have the possibility of making friends that aren't going to turn their backs on you the second that they think you didn't do your Watchtower. If you don't have family in it, you can leave whenever you want. You can leave whenever you want if you do have family. But if you do have family and you're trying to somewhat keep those relationships going, it's so much easier now to just fade. You ain't got to go out and field service or none of that stuff anymore. So it's the Watchtower has made it 1,000 times easier to fade and leave. So they have sped up their decline. You can't tell me it ain't easier to leave now. You ain't got to worry about shaving, and women ain't got to worry about putting on no dress or going out in service and none of that stuff. You can't tell me it ain't easier to fade now than it's ever been in Watchtower's history. So yes, they have sped up the fading process for people, making it a whole lot easier to distance yourself from that cult and eventually leave it. So people are going to be leaving faster. People are leaving faster. The old people that don't know up from down anyway, they're getting older and they ain't getting nothing but older, so they're going to die. And all you're going to be left with is a cult with a much looser grip on its members. So comment down below. Let me know what you think. Do you think Watchtower had done nothing but speed up its own decline and making it a whole lot easier for people to just relax and not... All this stuff was the stuff that they were doing to keep people so busy that they couldn't think. You were so busy back in the past, you couldn't think. Trying to keep up with all this field service and all you got to shave now and all you got to get dressed up a certain... Well, once they eliminate a lot of that stuff, now you got people that they're going to have a little bit more time to think. And thought, independent thought, and the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses, that don't mix. These people they ain't going to be following the governing body. So comment down below. Let me know what you think. X-Wall Kill Bethelite signing out.